elsewhere. And I think they're going to make some cars in Thailand. So we've got some basic questions here. If we're a strategic issues manager, and perhaps even if we are a marketing communication manager. And we need to ask questions about what are these issues actually? What actually is this issue about? Who's promoting these issues and why? Who opposes these issues? When I say opposes issues, I mean who has a different point of view about them than our organisation has about them. Are they emerging issues or are they actually impacting right now? And if you're doing your issues management work correctly, they won't be impacting right now and you won't know about them. You'll have done some identification early on to know what the impact of this issue might be and whether there's strong support in the community for that issue. Heath and Palanchar tell us that communication campaigns work to create legitimacy for competing organisations by justifying the positions they take and by the usefulness of those positions to the total dialogue about that issue. Now that's a strategic issues management point of view, but you can see that point in marketing communication issues analysis. Competing organisations, Ford and General Motors, or in this country, Toyota and Honda, competing with one another to sell you guys cars. And what positions do they take? Honda says our cars are really terrific, they're high tech. Toyota says our cars are really terrific, they're solid and reliable. There's a competing position, isn't it? And which one do you believe? Maybe you're like some people and buy your cars through the peripheral route and say, I like the look of Honda, so I'm going to buy one. But is a car being solid and reliable and fuel efficient better than a car being U-Butte high tech? That's your decision. But there's a competing argument. And the same point applies to the usefulness of those positions that car companies might take in their marketing communication. Which is more useful to you, a reliable car or a high-tech car? So issues communication entails reaching target publics. I talk a lot about target publics because my background is in public relations, but where I say publics today, you can also use audiences or markets if I don't already do it for you. So communicating about these issues means we have to reach a target audience, a target market, a target public with information that's useful to them and give them conclusions that are relevant to public policy. And the goal of all this is to forge a policy that satisfies all stakeholders. Well, that's the same point in marketing communication. We need everybody to be satisfied with the product, satisfied with the product we're trying to sell them. This point from Heath and Palanchar about, we argue about the legitimacy of our position on a public policy and to demonstrate that we have a legitimate role in the debate about a public policy is very much specific to issues, strategic issues communication. And this is about attracting and using power. Have I got the power to convince you to my point of view, in other words? And one of the major power resources is to be seen as a productive, useful contributor to a debate about a specific organisation. Do you have a credible position on this particular issue? Do people believe what you say? Or are you just trying to make a point and you're not a substantial voice in the argument? That again resonates with what happens in marketing communication. If I'm trying to sell you an automobile, it's a lot more difficult for me to do that if I've been seen to be producing dodgy vehicles in the past. If I I've always produced quality vehicles, it's not so hard to convince people of the legitimacy of my organisation to discuss debates. And so Heath and Palanchar tell us that strategic issue management campaigns are really about the strategic use of our organisation's voice on an issue. And that's also true of marketing communication. excuse me, of marketing communication. The strategic use of our voice about our product is important. We are using our legitimacy to have a say in the debate about selling products. That's what they mean in a marketing communication sense there. So how might we use that voice? Well, we can address an issue in 4 ways. We can be dialogic about it, having a discussion about it, or we can advocate a point of view. That's what happens in marketing communication. We advocate that our fountain pen, for example, is a better product than our competitor's fountain pen. In issues communication, we could actually not say a word, be silent about it. And that's a legitimate thing to do if you want to end the debate about something. And importantly, issues management is about trying to avoid a crisis. This is an intersection between marketing communication and strategic issues communication. The most difficult thing for marketing communicators is to sell a product if the organisation has been involved in a crisis that's related to that product. So here strategic issues communicators and marketing communicators can work together. This is a fairly complicated little chart, but it's designed, comes from Heath and Palanchard's book, it's designed to show us the link, the possible links between an issue, the risk that that issue might go bad, and the possibility that it could end up in a crisis. And so they're saying that on the issue, we might take a position. We have an interest in that issue and we take a position in it. We research it and we try to discover what the predictable consequences of that issue might be on our organisation and do a risk assessment. How far do we go in playing around with that issue? And if we don't get that bit right, go back, Jim. If we don't get that right, we end up with a crisis. And these are predictable events which happen because we didn't get our risk management right. Don't worry about trying to understand that in great detail because I'm going to give Dr. D a copy of the slides and Pong will have a copy of the slides as well, and you can burrow down into them when you get a handout. So let's think about issues in a little bit more of a practical sense. We have an issue. The first thing we need to do, whether it's a marketing issue or a strategic issue, is identify it. In a marketing sense, RSU needs more students. That's an issue. How am I going to get those students? In a strategic communication sense, for RSU, it might be the population of Thailand is declining, and that means there'll be fewer students wanting to come to RSU in 5 years' time. What will we do about that? So we need to identify and analyse an issue. We then need to have some kind of policy response in our organisation for how we're going to deal with that issue. That leads to a strategic plan. So in the marketing sense for RSU, they say, aha, the population's going to decline. Let's try and grab as many students now as we can so that we can balance out that population decline with the student enrolment. And we get out there and we communicate it. And we would be talking in both a strategic issues sense and in a marketing communication sense about the outcomes that we want to get out of this plan. We would want to avoid some undesirable outcomes, and we'd be working in what Heath and Palanchard describe as zones of meaning. That is, the mind frame that people have about particular issues and how they relate that issue to their whole life, a zone of meaning. What does that issue mean to you, mean to you, mean to you? and it might be different. In a strategic communication sense, we'd be trying to identify which issues do we need to deal with in a strategic sense. To whom are those issues important? With what will we address that issue? How will we address that issue? When and where will we address that issue? Timing's important in this. And when we talk about where will we address this issue, will it just be in the mass news media? Or will it be through engineering a direct communication chat with the people who talk about this? Might it be to a big town meeting? Might we go and have a community meeting with the people who are going to live around our factory? I think, here we go. In order to determine which issues we're going to deal with, we need to do a situation analysis. And I talked about situation analysis yesterday. And that involves developing a SWOT, strengths, weakness, opportunities and threat chart or table, and an issues matrix. And that's contextual, depending on the issue we face. And if you were with me on Friday, which horizon would we be working in? In a marketing communication sense, I'm going to argue with you in a short time, you would be dealing with Horizon 1, which is here and now. In a strategic issues management sense, Horizons 2 and 3. 5 years for Horizon 2, beyond 5 years for Horizon 3. Here they are. Horizon 1 is what's happening in our current business. Here's where marketing communication directly applies to our organisation. It's about the bottom line and it's about dealing with a crisis. Horizon 2 is about emerging businesses. We've seeded some great bright students from RSU to develop their ideas that we might be able to implement in 5 years' time. So we're dealing with issues that'll be around that. This applies generally in the non-market environment. It's about our reputation and it's about advocating a point of view. For future businesses, the issues we're talking about here, again, are non-market issues, and we're talking about the strategic application of research and programs about issues, because we're looking beyond 5 years. Remember, unless we resolve those issues that we've identified that might happen in 5 years' time, there might be a direct impact on the market. Therefore, we're not going to sell products which are going to generate, in the current business environment, in the market environment, the money that pays us and makes a profit for the organisation. And in all of that, we're emphasising the organisation's positions on that issue. This also applies to marketing communication. If you think about marketing communication dealing with selling product right now in the current business environment, but you're also thinking about how you're going to strategically keep doing that over the next few years. Let's have a think about what kind of communication we might engage in about issues in each of those horizons. So, first of all, go. In Horizon 1, we're talking about tactical communication, the market environment, doing things that marketing communicators do here and now, and away we go. The list of stuff that's up there is about strategic issues communication in a public relations sense, if you like. And we would be using uncontrolled mass news media strategy in the here and now with media relations stuff. This is sort of a repeat of what I talked about yesterday. Or we might be using interpersonal communication, making submissions to inquiries about something, or engaging in face-to-face communication, or using interactive social media stuff to get our point of view across. And marketing communicators would be using the website, blogs, social media applications, point of sale stuff, all of the other stuff related to marketing communication and special events and sponsorship, all happening in the immediate environment right now. What about Horizon 2? This is where we engage in a tactical dialogue about issues communication. The midterm, we're again playing in the non-market environment sandpit, and it's where we would engage in lobbying other people to adopt our point of view about something. Making policy submissions to public policy decision makers, saying it would be better if we could do this way rather than the way in which you're proposing to do it. We would use controlled or interactive communication, again the same stuff, social media, in order to promote a longer term view. And we might build alliances with other organisations who share the same values as we share, or an alliance with a charity. Because we're a good business, let's align ourselves with a charity. We'll get the benefit of the goodwill that the charity has. In Horizon 3, we're getting really strategic about long-term advocacy on positions in, on issues. And you can read the slide as well as I can, but the stuff is starting to look a bit similar, but it's much more longer term stuff. And there's not much marketing communication goes on in that horizon, except the long-term strategic stuff like that I mentioned from Ford. So let's think about, let's think about the situational aspect of this. Remember, if you're a public relations student or done any public relations, you remember that Jim Gruening talked about what happens in public relations depends on the situation the organisation faces. So situational public relations, for example. In Horizon 1, the situation means we're thinking about customers, suppliers, shareholders, regulators, employees, specialist media, and I'll come to specialist media when we talk a bit about target publics in a moment. Horizon 2 is about, remember this is the midterm, so we want relationships with our suppliers so that they continue to give us the materials we need to produce our products. Horizon 3 is about much more longer term stuff. We need to build relationships with those kinds of stakeholders. And to just stress the situational thing, Gruening says that what we do depends on the situation we face. A crisis, we do different things than if we're trying to sell a product. I want to talk a little bit too about issue dynamics from our friend Kirk Hallahan, who's the target public guy. So, situational stuff. A situation is the position in which an organisation finds itself vis-a-vis the issues it faces. So, the easiest way of describing that, the issue is a crisis about a dodgy set of brakes on a Toyota. That's the situation that they face. That involves us as issues communicators, strategic issues communicators, and you as marketing communicators in trying to resolve that situation.